My grandfather, Ferdinand Visco, was born in Vico, a cliffside town overlooking the Bay of Naples on September 5th, 1875. As a child, he learned to play many instruments. In fact, he was so good at playing the cornet that he was invited to perform in a concert at the La Scala Opera House in Milan. He was very well educated, especially in language. He spoke 5 languages and excelled in mathematics. In 1896, he enlisted in the Italian Navy, and in 1898 rose to the rank of naval officer. He left the Navy in 1899 and took a job as an officer on an Italian merchant ship. Later that year, when the ship he was working on docked in Boston, he jumped ship. Then he traveled across the country to San Francisco, supporting himself as best he could by doing whatever work he could find along the way. In San Francisco, he joined a musical band and earned his living by playing the cornet. After 6 months, he decided that he needed more steady work. His cousin from New York wrote to him that he had heard that the Hershey factory in Pennsylvania was in need of a foreman who could communicate with the immigrants of the many countries who worked there. He wrote to Mr. Hershey himself, told him of his qualifications, and Mr. Hershey hired him. And so my grandfather came back east and began to work in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Although he liked the job, my grandfather began to be worried about his health, especially about his teeth, because he was eating so much chocolate on the job. He also wanted to have his own business, so he left Hershey and came to New York City, where he had relatives. At first he sold fruits and vegetables from a pushcart. Then from a horse-drawn wagon, and ultimately he opened a grocery store in Manhattan. He had known my grandmother in Vico, and once he had established himself in New York, he sent for her. On May 15, 1902, Rosa Fucito, a wide-eyed country girl who lived all her life in a small Italian village, came to New York City. She married my grandfather less than 1 month later. At the time of their marriage, he was 27 and she was 24. They moved to a tenement apartment at 294 First Avenue between 17th and 18th Street, and on March 7th, 1904, my father, Joseph Visco, was born in that apartment. In 1906, because of a growing family, my grandfather moved to a larger apartment in the Murray Hill section of Manhattan on 2nd Avenue between 39th and 40th Streets. My grandparents had 5 children: Anna, Joseph my father, Gennaro, also known as Jerry, Angelina, also known as Sally, and Rosemary, who died tragically many years later during childbirth. Since jumping ship in 1899 to stay in America, my grandfather dreamed of becoming a genuine U.S. citizen. And so it was that on January 10th, 1918, he realized his dream. During the First World War, even though he was exempt because of his age, my grandfather registered for the draft because he was fiercely proud to be an American. Since the Viscos lived in New York City, my father, Joseph Visco, attended PS 27 on 2nd Avenue and then Textile High School on West 18th Street. Because he was a very fast runner, he became a track star at those schools. After high school, my father at first tried to make a living by working as a material cutter in the garment district, then by working as a dental mechanic, and finally by working as a bank teller. Like my maternal grandfather Michael Baratta, my paternal grandfather Ferdinand Visco knew the value of a college education. And so in 1925, he advised my father, who was then 21, to go back to school and become a pharmacist. Both he and my grandmother were happy to work hard and sacrifice so that my father could attend Fordham University School of Pharmacy in the Bronx. And when their youngest son Jerry was ready to go to college, they were equally as happy to pay for him to go to undergraduate school at Long Island College and then to go to Temple University School of Dentistry in Philadelphia. In 1926, my father's oldest sister Anna married Leonard Lucarelli, and my father was their best man. Anna moved to College Point, New York. Leonard's family, the Lucarellis, were one of the wealthiest families in that town. Because his daughter was living there, my grandfather visited College Point and liked what he saw. So in 1926, he rented a home at 20-43 127th Street from the Lucarellis and moved his family and business to College Point. His daughter Anna and her husband Lenny lived on the bottom floor, and he and the rest of his family lived on the top floor. My father graduated Fordham University School of Pharmacy in 1927 at the age of 23. After graduation, he worked as a relief pharmacist in many drugstores throughout Brooklyn and Queens, hoping to get enough money together to buy his own drugstore. even worked for my mother's brother Vincent and actually met my mother in that store many years before they started dating. Life at that time, however, was not all work and no play for my father, for when he was single, he was quite the ladies' man. In 1933, my grandfather purchased a building at 129-08 20th Avenue, which contained a store and 2 apartments. He opened a grocery store and delicatessen at that location and lived in the upstairs apartment. Eventually, he rented the downstairs apartment to his daughter Sally and her husband Larry. The Visco clan was now firmly established in College Point, and the whole family lived either in the same building or within 6 blocks of each other.
Students used to come down to my father's store and ask questions about math, about languages, and science. He used to help them all out.
Customers used to come to the store for advice.
It was just like a council. Everybody's going to be part of the neighborhood. My father played all
the wind instruments.
Even guitar. So I was playing the cornet. My brother was playing the trombone. My sister Sal Mandoline. Rosemary played the piano. And I was the violin. And my mother was a singer. And we all get together after meals, about 2 or 3 o'clock on Sunday, and we go ahead and play.
And the people
came just to hear us play. My father looked out the window one time and said, "What the heck is going on? We better close the windows. We're annoying them." They said, "No, Mr. Visco, we would open one here and play."
About this time, my grandfather's daughter, Sally, had become friends with a Polish-American widow named Gladys Bronicky and introduced her brother Jerry to her. The two hit it off and eventually got married in 1943, just before Jerry had to go into the Army. Jerry did not tell his family about the marriage because he didn't think they would approve of him marrying a non-Italian. When he returned from the Philippines in 1947, he moved back into his parents' home, and Gladys continued to live with her parents. Later that year, my grandparents found his marriage license, and the whole family now knew that Jerry was married. As soon as she found out, my grandmother went to see Gladys in her parents' house and told her, "You shouldn't be living with your parents. You belong with your husband." And she insisted on taking Gladys home and made her move in with her family on 20th Avenue. And so Gladys became a devoted daughter-in-law, and my grandparents lived with Jerry and Gladys until they died. As an interesting side note, it appears that my parents were fated to meet. When my father's brother Jerry Visco was going to undergraduate school at Long Island College, he became close friends with a classmate, one Ernest Pandolfi. At that time, my mother's sister, Alberta Barata, was also going to the same school. Ernest and Jerry met Alberta, and all three became good friends. Ernest was interested in Alberta and asked Jerry if it was okay with him if he went out with her. Of course, since Jerry was already keeping company with Gladys, he told Ernest that he didn't mind. And that is how Ernest Pandolfi began to date and in 1933 eventually marry Alberta Barata. And it was through Jerry Visco's relationship with Alberta Barata that the Visco and Barata families became acquainted.